A very good morning to you. This is the Fixed Wing Guide channel with me, Stuart Lomas. I hope I find you well. Second video of the day. First one was about the political situation here in the UK. I'm not going to say any more about that other than a little addendum. It's just been announced on the BBC that two party leaders have now resigned. One is Nick Clegg, the leader of the Social Democrats, who had to go, or Liberal Democrats, sorry, who had to go because since he recanted on his promise of student fees, he's had no political credibility, and as his party has been decimated, he's now gone. And Nigel Farage of UKIP, who always said that if he wasn't elected to South Thanet seat, he would resign, which he has. It is also expected that Ed Miliband, leader of the Labour Party here in the UK, may well also resign later today. So I don't think there's ever been in living memory three party leaders resigning on one day, or indeed ever, after a general election, but that would be a quite interesting thing to see. Anyway, back to form now. I'll start off with a little history lesson, if you don't mind. What I could do with is a mortarboard, you know, with a tassel and... try not to be boring here. I'll keep it as condensed as I can. Made a few notes, so I'll have a quick read of those as we go along. In the 1950s, there was, and you may already know this, and if you do, I apologise, but hopefully I'm educating some people here. There was a joint venture between a company called the Elgin Watch Company and LIP of France. And the idea basically was that they wanted to develop and produce an electronic mechanical watch movement that can be put out there for a reasonable cost, because obviously the mechanical watches generally have always been for the privileged few to a certain extent. In 1954, a gentleman called Max Hetzel developed an electronic watch with a revolutionary system based around what he described as a tuning fork mechanism which vibrated either side of a quartz crystal. Now, we all know that that sounds very familiar, and yes, indeed it should, because over the years that has indeed developed into what is now known as Bolivar Accutron, and indeed the brand new, very accurate Precisionist range, of which I own one, as you're aware. Through the 1950s and the 60s, a consortium came together because there were rumblings within the watch community that the mechanical movement and the automatic movement market in the watch industry was dying a death. So they were looking at the future here, and this consortium was between a number of Swiss manufacturers and Seiko. And they got together and they combined their Swiss manufacturing skills and watchmaking expertise with Seiko's expertise in electronics, the up-and-coming field of electronics, of course, because we'd entered the transistor phase of life at that point and moving beyond into the tiny printed circuits, and Seiko were at that time a kind of world leader in that, and I guess to a certain extent they kind of still are. The first operational quartz watch, as we would recognise a quartz watch, was unveiled at Baselworld in 1966. And between the late 60s, 68, 69, going into 70, there was a massive upsurge of this technology. People were seeing that this was the future, this was the way it was going to go. And a number of people between those years, between those key years of 68 maybe to 71, released their own quartz watches. Seiko released a watch called the Astron, which I have seen one of many moons ago, but I have seen one. Omega released the Electron Quartz, and Hamilton released a watch called the Pulsar. And as you can imagine, they're all wanting to push this futuristic vibe by naming their watches with these kind of futuristic names. This obviously developed over the next few years. I remember when I was at school, I was probably about, I don't know, maybe 14, something like that. The old digital watches came in. If you remember them, they had like the red opaque dial, or crystal as it were. You pressed the button and the time came up in red LED numbers, and you pressed it again and the date came up, and that's all it did. That's all it did, but that was the technology that you needed. And I remember my dad bought me that watch, and it was a Trafalgar, I think the brand was called, if I remember rightly, and I bought it from an electronics retailer here in Manchester at the time, and I loved it to bits. I thought it was great, and I thought I was a high flyer. And in 1978 I bought a Seiko Quartz Digital, which basically did everything. It had day, date, calendar, time, stopwatch, split time, alarm, you name it, it did it. It was absolutely fantastic, absolutely space age. I loved it until it died a death in about 1981. Never could get it put right. I don't understand that, but I love that watch, and if I ever found it again, I might buy myself one just for old time's sake. Anyway, this went along until about 1983, where the major players in the Swiss watch manufacturing kind of got together, and they saw that things weren't going particularly well for them. Sales of automatic and mechanical watches were plummeting, therefore demand was disappearing, and the prices were plummeting as well, because they were trying hard to regain some form of uptake. Then of course everything that we all remember or all have an understanding of is the invention and the release of the Swatch watch. Ah yes, that beautiful plastic watch, which went wild throughout the world. I never owned one. I never will own one. Why? Because not for me, I'm afraid. Can't put something plastic on my wrist. But that little thing saved the watch industry. So we've now got a potted history and we're all kind of up to speed. So my question is, which I obviously didn't complete at the beginning of the video or on the title, this is the question: would watch snobbery exist if quartz had absolutely killed off the mechanical movements? Now, I've thought about this over the last few days, and my answer to myself is, actually, I don't know. Because, as I've mentioned in a few videos previously, I think as human beings we are snobs. We're all snobs about something. It doesn't matter whether it's the type of coffee you drink, or the shops that you shop in, or the clothes that you wear, whether you want a particular label, or whether it's an area that you live in, or a car that you drive. So we're all snobs about something. So is it that the snobbery that we see every day, that a lot of people suffer from, because the people who believe they know more than you and I do give their God-believed opinion that this is the watch to buy? Would they have perhaps, as things developed and you got the standard quartz movements, and then what I said, that the red LED, and then the digital, and so on and so forth, and then the development of excuse me, the development of the kinetic movements and the solar powered movements, would it be that the snobs would be quartz battery snobs, and they would look down upon anybody who had a kinetic movement or a solar powered movement? So would the snobbery always exist, or would have, if quartz had killed off mechanical automatic prestige brands, let's say, although the prestige brands, I would wager, would have carried on making watches, but they would have all been quartz. We know that, you know, Omega make quartz watches, of course they do. So if they'd have gone 100% quartz, would the snobbery still be there just solely for the brand? when they were all using very similar technologies anyway. And obviously it's my belief that all mechanical movements are similar anyway, because they've all originated from one type of movement, and all people have done, we've tweaked them all just a little bit. Anyway, move away from that. So that's the question here, is would quartz, if it had really got a grip, and in 1983 Swatch hadn't come along, and quartz had carried on developing and developing and developing and developing, and we all know that quartz is far more accurate than any mechanical movement. If it had got a real hold and killed off the mechanical automatics, would watch snobbery still exist? Anyway, I'll leave you with that one. It's just something that's been milling through my head the last couple of days. As always, let me know what you think down below. If you have any questions or queries, or things that can take this argument further, things that I've missed, down below. I'm not an expert. I've never said I was an expert, and I don't believe I will ever be an expert. But going through time, you do learn things, and I find it quite interesting that between 1968-69 and 1983, there was such resurgence. And all I can assume that turned it around was the reasonable prices of the Swatch watch. Anyway, that's it. So, thank you very much indeed for all my new subscribers. I'm now to 108. Thank you very much indeed. Very, very unexpected. Please don't forget to subscribe. Please don't forget to leave your comments. In fact, make me a video to reply to this video. Be really interesting to watch, because I don't think I know the answer to this. I think it's a possibility that we might have ridden ourselves of Watch Snobbery. Would that be a bad thing? I don't think so. So, that's it for this one. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.